How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Hanging in there. It's good to meet you. I'm a fan of your channel.
Oh, thank you.
I I'll do a quick intro. I'm talking with Jay Horton. Do you want me to call you that? Do you want me to call you Jason?
You can call me Jason. I go
Okay.
by Jay professionally.
Yeah. Cool. Jason Horton. He makes movies that makes money. And that's a wonderful slogan. That's how I found you. Actually, I first came across your YouTube channel because you're the only one I could find at the moment that was talking about how Amazon was seemingly randomly pulling indie films from their
Yeah,
catalog. And I was one of those filmmakers that got this really mystifying email. I went in, lo and behold, I don't have a film on there. And what happened was I reached out to them and I'm like, hey, can you guys tell me more? Is there something that I did wrong? Can I re-encode it? Do I have to fix the subtitles? And they're like, no, we just have all these data points that tell us that our audience isn't enjoying your film and you're not allowed to put it back on there. And I'm like, okay, so what are these data points? And they wouldn't tell me what their data points were. And so I started doing research, and you're literally the only person who was talking about it that I could find.
yeah. I've seen some other filmmakers complaining about it. I've seen rants. I've seen posts. I've seen YouTube videos, but I hadn't seen anybody that was actually trying to do anything constructive with it or trying to provide information. Like, look, this is what it is. What can we do to move forward?
Yeah, I'm currently collaborating with a data analyst to work up an article kind of about the situation, and kind of going at it from a data standpoint, like because it would be a lot more helpful if we knew exactly what the parameters were. Because at this point, I can only guess. Okay, I have a slow opening. Maybe they're just not making it past the opening, but I don't know if that's the reality or not. And so yeah, so that's how I came across your YouTube channel, and I've just been digesting the content for the past couple of weeks. Like, I love it. I love this thing, and I just want to familiarize my audience with you and your output of work because I think it goes along the lines of kind of my mission on this end, which is sort of the democratization of information to make life in the arts a little bit easier.
Yeah, not to pat myself on the back, but when I was starting out, 20 years ago, there was nobody talking about the stuff that I'm talking about. There was nobody talking about lower budgeted movies, like how you got these going, how you got them into market, how you would market them once they got there. I mean, there was just nothing. All we had was, article after article after article about Kevin Smith made Clerks for $20,000. The Blair Witch guys made theirs for $20,000. El Mariachi was $7,000, and you're going to be big stars. And that was all we had. And then Robert Rodriguez's whatever 10-minute film schools was the closest thing to like an independent production. Like this was before indie film hustle was a thing. This was really before. Even some of the bigger ones, like No Film School and all those. So I learned by doing. I
Yeah.
learned by getting out there, making movies, making mistakes with distributors, fumbling around with marketing, and it took me the better part of 15 years to kind of figure out a method that worked for me. And I was like, what can I'm doing pretty good now. What can I do to give back? How can I help other filmmakers maybe not take 15 years to get to where I did?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm in the same boat where, I started making films in the late 90s in high school.
Yeah.
I went to film school from 2000 to 2001, complete waste of a year. And then really the bulk of my knowledge came from 15 to 20 years of just failing, getting it right occasionally, failing. But I didn't get my, I didn't get into my first festival until like literally my 21st movie.
Oh wow.
And the people in the audience at the award ceremony, when I said that, because when I went up on stage, I'm like, this is my 21st movie. Like, if you're not up here on this one, do it 19 more times or something like that. I'd said something like that, and people were
That's
just like gasped like that we stuck with it this long. But honestly, I think it's a calling, and if it's a calling, you know, that's what's gonna happen. I I have all these notes where I'm just kind of like that I took down as I was watching some of your content.
oh sure.
This morning I ate breakfast to the short film, the Espresso Assist.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the funny thing about that, so I've always been a filmmaker, and about a little over 3 years ago, a partner of mine, me and a partner, we found an investor to invest in our company, and he was putting in amounts of money, and at a certain point, we kind of pivoted from narrative, live action features into animation, and basically I became an office manager for 3 years. Like I wasn't really creating, I was just running this animation office. And that short film came out of that time. I was just like, I was itching to do something. So actually the Jenny Curtis that stars in it, she was, oh man, I forget what her title was at the company, but she worked at the animation company. She was an actress, and we just got together over a weekend and threw it together.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought the acting, especially with the not ordained character, was just spot on. I love that it's rooted in sort of this misunderstanding of officiating versus officiated versus ordained.
Right.
Just as a creative writing student, like all of my education is rooted in writing. I just love the play on words and how the whole movie is kind of rooted in the play on words. And yeah,
I was running a screenwriting group at the time as well, just another outlet. And actually, the writer was in that group, and this was one of the short stories he was sharing. And I was just like, man, this is awesome. Like, do you want to come make this? And I made him an offer, and we got together and made the movie. It's I've directed stuff that other people have written before, but this is like one of the first times where I actually like produced it myself. Where I wasn't a hired gun.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know. What can I ask you a question about the technical specifications? I don't usually do this, but I am curious about the ultra wide, like ultra wide.
Yeah, it was ultra wide. I honestly, it was so. Honestly, I don't have a good reason. I thought because it was so interior, like I wanted to give it a more epic scope, and I had just got done directing a narrative feature that was shot anamorphic, and I was kind of in love with that frame, even though it wasn't shot anamorphic, the short. But I just decided to play around with it. I was like, I wanted to get some more experience editing anamorphic, so I was like, I'll use this as kind of a, a step for that. But there really is no good artistic reason for it.
That seems good enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll be it for. I used to host the Q and A's for some of the film festivals here in New York, and the one thing that filmmakers always leaned on were technical questions. So I try to avoid them. But I was just curious about that.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to tech stuff, I'm honestly not your guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a very not technical minded filmmaker.
Yeah. You seem really down to earth with the business side, which is really rare.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, I know my stuff, but like I'm not going to get into an online argument about camera types or brands or
yeah. It's
I'm not going to argue Premiere versus Final Cut. I don't give a shit. It's all tools.
Yeah, and the tools will be out of date in a few years anyway.
Uh,
So, what you have a montage of people talking about what their opinion of a micro budget film is. What's your opinion of a micro budget film? What's the numbers to you?
so So for me, a micro budget film is anything shot under $25,000. $25,000 or under. Usually financed either by yourself or like people maybe crowdfunded. Usually just no like there's no legit like form of funding behind you. It's like you're bootstrapping it up. That's kind of how I consider it.
Great. Um, Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out for myself because I've done nothing but, with the exception of client work, I've really done nothing on my own that wasn't micro budget. And really, I've decided for myself to create a scale sort
Mm,
of, so like if there's a certain amount of production value in the script that I can't do, but I'm going to try to do, like maybe an indie action movie for $100,000 would be like a micro budget, but a talkie would definitely be a big budget for that same amount of money.
right. Yeah. I honestly, it's all semantics, and all a matter of
Yeah.
perspective. There was somebody in my last documentary that he would get really like adamant and bent out of shape over, that quantification. Like, no, it has to be, $10,000 or under, or it's not a micro budget. It's no budget. And then, like different, and I'm like, man, it's all, it's all gravy.
What in one of your videos you talk about how it's important to stay creative on the business side. At
Mm.
what point, what can you give us an example of like some of the earliest projects where you really started realizing this, and kind of what you were doing at the moment? What were you doing before this realization, and what specific moves did you start making when you realized, wait a minute, I need to be more creative beyond just the creation of the thing?
Right. Well, I wish I could go back and say it was a long time ago, but honestly, it was about probably 2 years ago. I was living the filmmaker dream just like or I was pursuing the filmmaker dream just like anybody else. I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to give it to a distributor. It's going to make a ton of money. I'm going to get, the next movie funded from it. Like it's all one thing's going to lead to another. And, and I was failing at that like over and over again. I shouldn't say. I mean, I was hired to direct a lot of movies that have done very well, but like I didn't own them. As far as stuff that I've owned though, like where I produced it, I made it. I think I'd done maybe 6 narrative features, prior to 2 years ago that were 100% mine, and 90% of those were not financially successful, or at least not upon their initial releases. So, and then about 3 years ago, I did a movie called The Campus, which was later changed to Death Day, and you know, it turned out pretty good. We had a decent budget, we had a decent shooting schedule. Had I made that exact same movie even 2 years prior, I think it would have been a hit, without me knowing how to market it. But so it came out, it didn't do so hot, and I'm like, why is this failing? Like the movie's okay, like it has the budget, I have all the sellable elements. Why is it not selling? And just like one day it hit me as like, I don't really know how to market. Like I'm doing the same thing that all the other filmmakers are doing. I'm making posts on social media like, oh hey, please see my movie. I'm going into filmmaker groups and I'm soliciting other filmmakers to see my movie, but I'm not doing anything that's approaching a real viable market strategy. So it was right around there that I made the switch. And it also coincided with me starting to work on documentaries.
I have a quote I pulled from you. I think
Sure.
this is a great quote because I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of luck in all of this. There's a lottery ticket component to every one of their successes, and in this you were talking about auteurs like Scorsese, and I honestly think that that quote, you know how they have quotes on some people's IMDb profiles? You should put that quote on your profile. It's an excellent quote, and it's so important
Thank
to
you.
get across to film students that a lot of this is luck. Like you could be the best of the best. You could really have some of the most original ideas, and maybe even have the luck of having invested in a kick-ass digital cinema camera package, but you're still going to require a lot of luck on the other side of this. And
Yeah.
you're preaching everything that I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, I think where that really kind of it hit me a few years ago. I was talking with a distributor, and I was looking at some of their titles, and they were showing me this title, which I wish I could name it, but they would freak out. Anyway, so they show me this movie, and this movie is doing like nothing. I mean, it's making like $15 a month, if that, like nothing. And it's one of the best independent movies I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's every bit as good as Reservoir Dogs, every bit as good as El Mariachi. I mean, it was awesome. And they showed me another couple movies that were not quite that good, but on a similar level that weren't doing well. And then it just hit me like the director of that movie. I mean, he's every bit as talented as a Tarantino or a Spike Lee or a Christopher Nolan, but the world will never know him.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people like that. I've met, I got a friend out in Santa Monica who he won Sundance in the '90s, the same year that Ed Burns won,
Oh
and
yeah.
he hasn't done nearly as much. And I just honestly don't know what happened. I think that it really comes down to luck.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
mean,
weird.
and we're not taking anything away from these guys' talent. Like I talk a lot
No.
about Tarantino, and I love Tarantino. He's one of my favorite writer directors ever. I mean, I think he's immensely talented. And there are people that, yes, like they're going to get found. Like they're so good, they're going to get found. But that's like, again, that's a lottery ticket thing. That's like a one in a million, you know?
Yeah.
And so the rest of us, we just have to keep working. We have to create a body of work and a consistent body of work, and we have to keep making, that not our first movie is most likely not going to break us out. Our second movie is most likely not going to break us out. We'll most likely never hit that viral movie, to borrow a, young person term. Like the movies they're not going to go viral. Like I do very well with my movies now, but like they're all at modest amounts. I mean, I'm not making $1 million on anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that comes down to sort of the expectations that young people have that is always rooted in the success stories of everybody that came before them. And I actually think Kevin Smith's story is bad for business. It's bad for the future. Like we should stop telling it. Because one, it's not even the same festival that it used to be, and two, it's just such a long shot, and it doesn't really inspire entrepreneurial spirit in the film industry. And I think we need to change the expectations by changing the story. And I think your story is a great story. Like, yeah, it took a while, but you seem to be getting there, and you're using what you've learned along the way to kind of retool the public story. And I've been obsessed with the story. It's why I didn't do anything for a long time because, I didn't have the right camera and it wasn't
Yep.
going to go into the right festival. Screw this hole in the wall festival. I now love hole in the wall festivals. I think they're the best. But yeah, I think it's really just retooling expectations by taking all these stories and kind of retooling them so they're a lot less important than they have been. And I don't 100% know how to do that except to be doing stuff like this because I don't have control over places like IndieWire or some of these other publications that continuously put out
Yeah.
reminders. Hey, this is what Kevin Smith did in 1990, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
it cracks me up when I see like something from like IndieWire or one of the bigger things, and it's like how to succeed with independent film, and it's like 5 steps with Robert Rodriguez, and I was like 30 years ago, man, 30 years ago, like
yeah,
that world, that independent cinema, it does not exist anymore. It's not there. Like you absolutely, it's not just a few people come up like that. Nobody comes up like that anymore. Nobody.
yeah.
Like I was just thinking about this the other day. I asked this in a filmmaking group, and maybe part of it is just me getting a little bit older. But I'm sitting here thinking like the last like like rock star director that I could think of was in that 90s thing, the Kevin Smiths, the Tarantinos. Like, I can't think of anybody in the last 20 years that's had that kind of cultural impact, has an individual, not their movie, like, but has an individual. Like, people knew. My mom, who was in her 70s in Indiana, she knows Quentin Tarantino. But like, she doesn't know who the fuck Christopher Nolan is. She doesn't know Robert Eggers. She doesn't know the Duplass brothers. She doesn't know the brothers that made Uncut Gems, Safdie brothers. Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't know him from Adam, but she knows Quentin Tarantino. She knows Spike Lee. Yeah,
Yeah, I almost think the cutoff started with like the baby boomer generation, so the Spielbergs and the Lucas, and then we had a few stragglers after that, like Smith and Tarantino, and that's almost all thanks to Miramax because that,
yeah,
despite the evils that we found out about the head of that company, he really pulled a lot out of some of these guys in terms of creating a new sort of generation of auteurs. But yeah, it hasn't happened since. And yeah, all these names you just dropped, I know them, but I'm a
yeah,
filmmaker. I have to know them. But it's so strange to me that nobody after sort of, I guess they're Gen X, that
uh,
the, they never made that. They never made it to that status. And this is something I brought up on a couple podcasts episodes ago with author Amy Morin, where like we were talking about how like it seems like after 1980, people who were born after 1980 or kind of around the turn of the decade there just never seemed to climb that ladder. And I don't know what it comes down to. We were guesstimating some ideas, but
yeah. Well, I think it's a myriad of things, but I mean, as far as independent film, it changed. It's just not the same landscape. The film festival, discovery thing, like, it just doesn't happen. Like, very, very, very rare. It just, nothing. The distribution is different. The limited theatrical distribution was different. DVD distribution was different. Streaming has changed everything for independent film.
yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. And for a while, initially, streaming, I was able to profit off it, and
Hmm.
then, like as you've tackled in some of your videos, Amazon bean counters changed the model, and suddenly I wasn't. And I think it's going to continue. It's going to continue to be a fight where like you have to find find your way to do it, find your way to profit off it, but don't lean hard in as don't depend on it because the bean counters will change it down the road.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think it's super important not to count on any one platform. And I'm right in the same boat. I mean, I still to this day, I think this month might be the first month where I had another platform surpass Amazon. Like, I was still making most of my money on Amazon. It's just, and I'm making relatively good money, but I would have been making like, 15 times what I'm making now 2 years ago, which is, every
yeah,
now and then that's sad.
yeah, um, it is, and I think that's it's important though that we convey like to people who are interested in doing this that this is the reality of stuff that you're gonna have to deal with once your movie's done. And so I'm glad that you're getting all that content out there. I'm glad we're able to do it here. And oh, I made a note here uh, I, about Netflix. Here's my note. It literally says Netflix equals fairy tale, and you need a 4K master. That came
Right.
from watching some of your videos. I love that because it's true, man. They're not an indie film distributor.
No,
Maybe
it just cracks me up. I see it all. You can almost always tell kind of a wannabe producer in Hollywood because they'll somebody that's never had a movie out on Netflix, but they'll sit there and talk about how their movie is going to be distributed on Netflix. You can usually tell they don't know what the hell they're talking about. For one thing, it'll never get there, and even if it does get there as an independent, you're not going to make any money. Like Netflix pays so little for those unless you're a known quality, unless you have a big name actor in there. I mean, they take a 2 or 3 year license, and I mean, you're looking at maybe 15 grand over the course of those 3 years, depending on the project. You know, it differs, but they can pay very very little, and even compared to the 1 cent an hour at Amazon. I mean, I have titles in Amazon that make 1 cent an hour that I still make $1,000 a month on, but had I give that to Netflix, I would have made like a quarter of that.
I've only known two people who ever had their movies on there. They didn't even make it a year. The movies got pulled for some reason, and they didn't make anything.
Yeah.
It's
I've had a few, but not. I think the last one I had on there was probably 3 years ago, and it was through another producer. But I mean, they paid a license fee up front for it, and we made a little bit of money off it, but it was small. And then I had a horror movie that was on there almost, Jesus, probably 10 years ago, right where they first started doing streaming, and I did okay on that one. But again, that was a different, completely different time.
I'm interested in more of your background. Where are you based? Are you okay saying where you're based?
Yeah, yeah. I live in Georgia now. I moved here about 3 months ago. I was based in LA. Before that, I was in LA for 15 years. That's where I did the bulk of my work. I did my first. I'm going like backwards chronologically. Before LA, I was in New Orleans. I went to college there, shot my first movie, and before that, I was born in Indiana.
Oh, okay. So you've been in the South and Midwest,
Hmm.
and then LA. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
what
kind of
brought you
like.
to Georgia?
Honestly, I got to a point in my work where I could live wherever. I mean, I all my content is self-generated. I fund my own movies. I shoot my own movies. I can do them anywhere. Like if I want to do a larger narrative, I can go down and shoot it in Ohio or California, wherever I want. I don't need to be based in LA anymore for contacts.
Right.
And, I'm getting a little older. I wanted to, looking at buying a house and stuff like that. Real estate's cheaper down here. And I just kind of miss like I'm outside of Atlanta now. I like the country.
Well, yeah, and Georgia seems to have a pretty good film presence down there at this point.
Yeah, they do. They
I
do.
see the whole
Unfortunately.
Georgia symbol on a lot of movies now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't got out and networked that much here yet, but we're still COVID. And I mean, I have probably a dozen like documentaries in the can right now that I'm still trying to, do editing on.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your documentaries. You mainly produce those?
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, I make them soup to nuts, but as far as career, I'm not looking to build my career as a documentary director. So that's usually something I'll give to somebody else working on the movie with me, or I'll use a pseudonym. Um, so yeah, I usually just take the producer credit, but I'm editing them, I'm shooting them. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I'm the director. There's a few where, the director that's credited, did the work, but not often.
Yeah, you've produced a couple of movies I saw before I even ran into your YouTube channel because one of my guilty pleasures is UFOs and aliens.
Oh, okay.
I rarely reveal that, but
Yeah, yeah. No, I wasn't. I mean, honestly, I didn't really know too much about it. I was more interested in the people that were into it, which is one thing that I really like about documentaries in general. You don't necessarily have to support or be into the subject of the documentary, but it's like it's the people's passion about the subjects is what to me is what's entertaining. So which is another reason why I kind of jump around so much in different types of documentaries.
yeah, I remember that being the case when I got hired to do some video work for. There was this national nonprofit. Well, I won't name drop them, but they had me going around New York City just to interview elected officials
Mm.
about this topic, and I was just blown away by like how much passion lies in any given subject area, and how little effort to me it seemed to produce this stuff, because it seems like with fiction it's always I'm always constantly trying to inspire people that this is the right thing. This is this is where we should put our energy. It's worth it. But with whenever I was producing some of this content, it was much easier to kind of let things roll because everybody always already had that fire under their asses
Yeah.
in some way or another. So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
can totally see how that could be relatively enjoyable.
yeah, I mean, this is like my thing on documentaries, and this is a gross generalization. And I'm not shitting on narrative movies. I still like my passion is still making more narrative movies. I just make them less often now. But I think that documentary filmmaking. I'm sorry, let me backtrack that. Narrative filmmaking in general is coming from a more selfish place. It's a look at me medium, whereas documentary filmmaking is look at the person that I'm doing, look at the subject. It's about the subject. It's not about the movie. It's not about the filmmaker. It's not about the actors. It's about the subject you're exploring. And I think that also, when you're talking about marketing, that leads itself into like the perfect storm of marketing, because you're creating content like for an audience that gives value to an audience. Like I did a dog rescue documentary, and there are people all around the country that are super passionate about dog rescues. Like there is an audience. You can find them in Facebook groups and Reddit threads, and they will watch your movie. Even if it's a different state, they don't care. They want to support that. Or if you're talking about the aliens one, there's a super passionate, very large community behind those subjects. Or Bigfoot, or whatever it is. So I just as far as documentaries go, that kind of selfless approach also leads to better, easier to market.
I'd imagine too that you're connecting with people you wouldn't have otherwise connected with, and some of my favorite contacts have resulted from me doing these types of projects where I wouldn't have otherwise thought to do. As a filmmaker and films, or as a film student, I was anti-documentary. I was like not interested in working on a crew. I was just like, my movies, my movies, my movies. It really is an insular medium, unless you consciously are able to kind of break out of that. And
Yeah, and there are people that do. Like I said, it's a generalization, but and I'm just basing this on kind of my career trajectory. And when I started, and I was making narrative movies, and I was very self-focused. I mean, everything was about me. Like I didn't want to hear nothing about your movie or about, working together, collaborating. I could care less. It took a few years and some maturing for me to realize, that the world was a lot bigger than just me.
yeah, I think that's honestly, you say it's a generalization, but it's rooted in truth. And that was me for a long time as well. And I think that's like a lot of young filmmakers. It's all about them. And it does take growth. It does take doing projects and running into problems for people to realize that we're more likely to get through this if we work together. And so, yeah, I mean, the main reason I reached out to you was because we're promoting this idea that the best way to promote an independent film or an independent filmmaker is to start supporting others, start supporting your peers, which time and time again I've been trying to get people to adopt. And I mean, this goes back many years. At one point, I was a I had brought my film to the Anthology Film Archives here in New York because we have this weekly screening series called New Filmmakers New York. I don't know if you know about it.
No.
Every Wednesday and Thursday, they screen independent films, and it's one of the better bets to submit to because it's weekly, and so they're always hungry for content, and they'll screen it in an actual movie theater
Hmm.
on the Lower East Side. And after I screened there for the first time, I said, hey, I would like to start meeting the filmmakers that come through here. And so, would you be interested in giving me admission every week? In exchange, I'll do video interviews for you. And so, I created sort of a YouTube channel for them and a filmmaker profile series, which I did for a couple of years just to network with filmmakers. And honestly, that was the most productive time I had in terms of promoting my own work because I was getting other people not only their exposure, but they were being exposed to me and my content. And I almost didn't need to do any work in that era to promote my stuff because they would come out of the woodwork and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing now? Or I've been following you and I see that you're doing this. And before it was just empty Facebook posts. Hey, I'm doing this. And
Yeah.
then maybe you get a like if for somebody who feels bad for you. And that was it. But yeah. And so when you were saying that, like, really, it all comes down to supporting others. I mean, those aren't your specific words, but that's
Mhm.
kind of the gist of that one video where you were talking about ways to promote yourself and promote your project. And I 100% agree. And I want to hit it home that that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I feel really, really strongly about that. And it's one of my, I am definitely not somebody that sits around on social media and judges people based on what they do or don't post. But one thing, the one judgmental side of me is like if I have a filmmaker friend and if I go on their Facebook and I scroll down their main page and there's no links for anything by anyone else that doesn't directly involve them, that isn't a big studio film, I like it's almost an automatic like defriend. Like I've actually cut myself off professionally from talented filmmakers, like nice guys, but they just totally self focused online, and it's such a big pet peeve of mine. Like it really triggers me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think some of it too is like there's also like social media strategies that
Mm,
are now out there where firms will tell their clients like something but don't share it if you if they acknowledge you, but only share it if you personally benefit from it. And I'm just like, that doesn't that and like I understand why they're saying it, but it
yeah,
really gets under my skin that that's an official strategy of a lot of people now because
it's
these are
just
what
kind of
these
gross.
firms decided. Yeah, it's gross.
Because I mean, just on a purely pragmatic level, one of the hardest points in self promotion is self promoting. Like it looks ugly, it looks gross. And no matter how clever you are or how you wrap it up or try to make it about something else, it's self promotion. So what helps to make that seem not so bad, to seem a little less gross, you throw in posts for other people. You throw in more posts for other people than you do about yourself, and all of a sudden you don't look like this big self-promoting asshole. When in fact maybe you don't really care about those people and you're just sharing it, and that's fine. I mean, and to be 100% honest, that's probably how I started it. Like when I first started like actively sharing for others, I probably was just thinking, oh, like people will see me doing this and it'll make me look good, and it wasn't this altruistic thing. But over time, doing those actions, like starting the YouTube channel, I mean, initially I was like, I want to do this thing and I want to try to get a few more eyeballs on my documentaries, and I'll talk about filmmaking. But after doing, I don't know, 10 or 15 of the videos and starting to get feedback from people saying, oh my gosh, this was so helpful and this and that, it switched in my head, and it actually became this like more of a service than a self-promotional thing.
I know that some stuff probably is a little foggy at this point, but I have, for me, I have a production that I did some years back, which totally educated me on sort of the realities of the film business. And of course, that's my first first and thus far only time directing a movie under the SAG-AFTRA contract.
Mm.
Do you have a production where like it was a turning point in terms of your realization of like, because when I was initially making independent movies, I was in a fog of fantasy about what it was that I was doing versus after this production, I kind of realized the actual world I was living in, the brutality of the world I was living in. And do you have a moment like that where like, oh my god,
You
I'm
know,
really alone or something like that?
honestly, there wasn't a single one. It was a culmination of moments. And I mean, when my first movie came out and didn't make any money for me, made the distributor money, but didn't make any money for me. And then the second movie came out, same thing happened. Third and fourth movie, same thing happened. It was through the culmination of those events, and then working for some producers that were making micro budget movies and making money on them, and seeing how they were doing and how they were doing it. A combination of those things kind of opened my eyes.
Yeah, it's so vulgar. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, it's a
the
wonder that I didn't. I just said this in a video the other day because I'm kind of going through my filmography movie by movie and doing a little video on each one. So like I just finished the fifth one, which was the first time I was hired to direct a movie. But the first four were they all self-produced or produced, with friends, bootstrapped up, and in initial releases, we never made money on any of those. Years later, a few of them made some money, but at least then, like I was four movies deep and every single one had lost money.
well, at least you saw the writing on the wall. Yeah, it took me this production where I just kind of realized that wow, this organization, which I thought would be an asset to the production, they didn't care two shits whether I finished that film or not. All they wanted was a deposit into their pension fund. And I'm just
Mm.
like, holy shit. That was the only gray hair I ever sprouted so far. I'm 39, and that was in my early 30s. And after I vowed to not deal with them again, and as long as I was financially responsible, I uh, I never got a gray hair after that. Thank you very much. I
Oh, no
really
problem.
appreciate your time. Very valuable content.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Bye.
All right. Have a good one.